I love this thing because this was a poster for the very first Grand Prix of Monaco. You can see Caracciolla's in there, Rene Dreyfuss. We all remember Rene Dreyfuss from when he was in New York City. I had a chance to meet him, of all places, at a vintage race in Michigan. What's the name of that? Groton, Michigan. Groton, Michigan. Yep. Quite a guy. And he's a teammate of Nuvolari in the 35 Grand Prix. Here's Willie Grover passing someone, and he's in the lead. And look at the ships in the background. I didn't know they had rich people back then. Not in 1929. That's in there. Rather innocent-looking smile, but he was a hell of a driver whose career was shortened by a stupid war. Now here on the left is the nice German man, but on the right is the very debonair Willie Grover. And look, the British guy has the larger trophy than the German guy, which I don't like that. Oh, and by the way, when I say German, I have to emphasize, I was stationed there. I love the people that were great to me, so I really should be saying Nazi, but I didn't like saying that. So another great guy, a fabulous driver. He was the leading driver for Delage, and he got the Legion of Honor from France for his racing exploits. So he was very good. And here we see the two of Robert Benoit is the way, no, Robert Benoit is the way you're supposed to pronounce his name. And on the right is Jean-Pierre Vimille. And they are in the Bugatti 57G tank, which now resides in the Simeon Museum. If you don't go to that, you should think again about it, because it's a great, great museum. But stumbling across this just gave me goosebumps, because knowing the story and knowing that their fate would be intertwined really got me going. But they won Le Mans, they won Delray, I think, the 24-hour race here. That's a nice picture of a great car. So each has a separate tale, but for example, in Benoit's case, when he parachuted into France, occupied France, he got all disguised up, took a bus, and he wound up in Le Mans, at the train station in Le Mans. Here's a guy who had won the Le Mans race. He couldn't disguise his face, but the irony of it was struck me. But sometimes they're together on projects, but I mean, these were courageous guys. Can you imagine parachuting into occupied lands? I certainly couldn't. One of the things they did sounds like it's out of a movie, but one of the guys was arrested by the SS, and they're taking him to jail. Two large burly guys are sitting on either side of him, and there's one in the car, and his fate is sealed. But because he sold cars, he knew the door mechanisms. He was able to reach behind them when they weren't noticing, and they pulled the doors open when they run around a turn, pushed the guy out of the car, jumped on the road, and ran away. Then it ensued a rooftop chase, like you see in the movies. He got to one part, and there's a big glass dome. He jumps through the glass dome, lands on the stage of the opera. I mean, I've seen that in movies, but it really happened in real life. It blows my mind. So they were all heroes, period, in the most proper sense. So basically, to wrap this up, two of them were murdered by the Nazis in concentration camps. Jean-Pierre Vimille got away, but one of them was murdered by slow strangulation. The other one, they're not even sure what happened. So in France, 9 days after Japan surrendered, they had a race called the Prisoners' Cup. If you're historians or like that stuff at all, it's named after not just the three of them, but all the prisoners, to honor them. But they had a race early on to honor those guys. And one of the winners of the race was Jean-Pierre Vimille, who was part of that group. So that had to be a very emotional time. Now here is a factory video, and it stopped working. Get out the accordion. Oh, no, don't stop that. Ah, shoot. Okay, hold on, come on. This one, okay. Microsoft. This is all my fault. You want to know why? I put a joke in here about Microsoft, and I don't have nothing against Microsoft, but I thought it was funny. And I was looking at it yesterday, because it was an error message, and it said about a fatal error or something. So I probably won't show the joke now. But as I was looking at it, it says, PowerPoint is shutting down. I said, I don't remember putting that slide in there, but it was doing exactly what's happening now. So if anybody has any idea why that would happen, I'm going to have to reboot this thing and go to slide 157. Shoot.
Until 1934, Germany had been excluded from the French and Belgian Grand Prix, and the last new racing car that Mercedes had produced was in 1926. So a radical modern design was clearly essential for the 750 kilogram formula. Work began in 1933. Soon, in the Mercedes-Benz racing department at Stuttgart, craftsmen began meticulously to assemble a prototype engine to power the new car. It was designated W25, and unlike the contemporary French and Italian contenders, owed little to the past. The engine was initially 3.3 litres and supercharged by a large Roots blower, pressurizing the carburetor, creating the characteristic scream of these cars. Even in its early form, the straight-eight engine produced over 400 horsepower. The body was carefully streamlined to reduce drag, and independently sprung wheels offered the road holding required at a speed of 175 miles an hour. The gearbox was in a unit with the back axle, which soon became universal for racing cars. The W25 was not the only German design. At Chemnitz, Ferdinand Porsche had designed for Auto Union a most unusual rear-engined car, commonplace now, but unexplored territory in 1934. Auto Union also began construction in 1933. The firm was a consortium created by Hoch, Honda, DKW and Audi. The car had a V16 4.4-litre blown engine producing 300 horsepower. It was tested on a rolling road. When driven on the track, however, the handling was suspect. The international debut of the German cars was at Montlhéry near Paris for the 1934 French Grand Prix. The Mercedes team manager, Alfred Neubauer, leads a superb team which is confident of victory. The French crowd are delighted as the popular Louis Chiron wins. The press begin to dismiss the German comeback into Grand Prix racing. But in Stuttgart, at the end of the 1934 season, the Mercedes team are greeted as heroes for the races which they did win: the German Eifelrennen, the Coppa Acerbo at Pescara in Italy, and the Spanish Grand Prix.
Yeah, they didn't do as well as they thought they would. Basically, what they're saying. There was still some fight in the Italians. This is another great picture. I'm going to have to fast forward some of these because I hate doing this. These are such good videos.
Will we come back next year?
Yes. This is the, we're going to talk a little bit about the German Grand Prix, give you a setting for what it was like back then. The tension, it was awful with the rise of the Nazis. They started having much more aggressive race posters because it's all macho and, you can see by yourself. You want to go to a race where that guy is going to be, I don't know. The whole Nazi thing was awful. This is a Walter Getch painting, wrong year, but nice. It'd be nice to be in a bar and identify all those people. Ernst Toll, nice painting. Oh, you got to see this. I'm sorry. Do you have any Graham Hill fans in the room?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, then we're going to see this one. Do you have a comment? Good.
Germany, looking northwards towards the distant seacoast, and where the Moselle flows east from France to join the Rhine in the wooded Eifel Mountains, lies the most picturesque and difficult motor racing circuit in the world, the Nürburgring. This is the traditional setting for the German Grand Prix, and here, at the scene of its pre-war triumphs, is one of the great racing cars of the past, the 1937 W125 Mercedes with its 8-cylinder, 645-horsepower engine. Powerful, too, is the famous Mercedes team manager, Alfred Neubauer, who has with him the European champion of 1939, Hermann Lang. They have come to the ring specially for our cameras to record. It's 25 years since this Mercedes raced here, and Grand Prix cars of today are limited to barely a quarter of the capacity, producing only a fraction of the horsepower of this, the most powerful Grand Prix racing car ever built. The Nürburgring is made up of 14 miles of road specially built for racing and high-speed testing. This time you will sit behind the wheel and hear the 1962 World Motor Racing Champion Graham Hill giving his impression of the finest of all motor racing circuits.
We very often get our pit signals from this section, illegally so. They put the big high wire fence up there to stop the mechanics giving us signals, but we can very often get a very good quick lap time in from this section. Now we've taken very carefully, and again very slippery in the wet. This is followed by a series of left and right turns, about 5 or 6 in all, very close together, and very, very tricky to take at any speed at all. We're trying to pinch every available inch of road here to straighten out the corners. There's a good example there. He just touches the dirt and a little puff of dust rises. And we're trying to do this all the time. Of course, it pays to be extremely accurate on this circuit and have the following corner in mind. And we go rushing down over a couple of bridges until we come to a section called the Flugplatz, just here in front of us. Actually, all the cars leave the ground at this point. It's an extremely tricky corner because it's followed up by a very fast right-hander. We're now entering a very fast downhill section. This point here is about the fastest path on the circuit. It's downhill, and we get up to about 150 miles an hour. It's even quicker than down the straight. This is the Foxrue, fast downhill section, left and right-hand corners, all concealed from view. It was on this section in the practice for the 1962 Grand Prix that I met with a slight accident when I ran over a television camera that had dropped off another car. I hit the camera just about here, it held my oil tank, and I spun off into the ditch on the left-hand side on my own oil. I went burrowing down this ditch behind those hedges like a giant mole and ended up about here, still fortunately up the right way. Now we come to the downhill section going down to Adenauer Gate. It's a very fast section, but you need to be extremely brave to go down here very quickly. The corners follow one another in quick succession, going around the side of the hill, and if you can, you try and set the car up into a giant drift to drive the car through all these corners in one smooth line. This is a little bridge that must not be confused with the Adenauer Gate one, for the approach is very similar, and I'm afraid one or two people do make mistakes. And you can probably see one or two little holes in the hedges, which shows where they actually left the circuit. This you have to hug right into the hedge. It pays to touch the actual leaves of the hedge with the left-hand wheel. And now we're approaching the Adenauer Gate, which is a fairly similar approach to the little bridge we've just seen. Very fast. I always ease off just about here, drop into here, touch the dirt on the outside, then brake very hard for this bridge here. And then set the car up into the left-hand corner and hug the inside of the track very closely here. And over the bridge and away up to the uphill climb till we reach, again, the full height of the Nürburgring circuit. Now straight into the carousel. One gets very heavy due to the extra G-load on one's own body weight, and the car gets thrown around. It's very easy for the car to slip out of this banked section, and then of course you go straight through the hedge like a stone on the end of a piece of string. This is the Swallowtail, which is a smaller version of the carousel. Being less banked, it's even easier to fly out. Now this is the straight between two very tall hedges. It's fairly narrow. One would imagine that one would get to speeds of about 170 miles an hour on this very long straight. And in actual fact, it's climbing all the time uphill, and it also dips. It's in fact called the switchback. The cars go up and down through little sort of rises and hollows, and it is on occasions that the cars that one is following actually disappear from view. We approach a very, very tricky corner at the end of this straight, which goes up under a bridge, and the cars actually leave the ground, and just as they leave the ground here, we've got to turn left. The car is very, very light, and the road drops away, making the position even worse. This is followed by a series of very fast left and right-hand corners, which could almost be taken flat out in 1962 Formula One cars. And this completes another lap of the German Grand Prix circuit, the Nürburgring.
Acting skills. Now, I'm not going to show the John Watson video because he drove a car like that. I just love these Alpha pictures. Now, this one you got to see. There's Hans Stuck again. This will answer a lot of your technical questions, I'm sure. But
the Auto Union racing car. Its first public appearance was just as sensational as a new trademark. 4 interlocking rings, symbolic of the Olympics, a programmatic expression of sporting ambitions. The Auto Union was created in 1932 from the 4 marques native of German Saxony: Audi, DKW, Horsch and Wanderer. 20 mechanics were responsible for the engine, 6 for the gearboxes and axles, and 12 for the chassis. 20 metalsmiths alone were needed for the bodywork and other sheet metal work. This was not surprising, because the aluminium bodies of the Silver Arrows were all handmade. All parts, including cylinder liners, the engine block and the main engine bearings, were machined in the Horsch series production plant. In particular, the high-strength steel root superchargers required a great deal of intricate rework. The racing car was designed by Ferdinand Porsche. His concept called for a 4.4-litre engine, its displacement being distributed over a large number of small units to give a V-type 16-cylinder arrangement. The ignition mixture was injected into the engine through a supercharger. Each cylinder was to have one inlet valve and one outlet valve. All 32 valves were controlled by a central camshaft. In the first engine, a single-piece crankshaft was still used. However, the vibration and elasticity problems could not be solved with the required length and loading. A decision was therefore taken to gear the individual crankshaft segments and screw them together. Porsche had realized that the key problem with the new formula, 750 kilograms maximum permissible weight without tires, fuel and water, was not so much the increase in performance, but more the translation of these powerful forces into acceleration and speed while attaining good road holding. This prompted him to shift the center of gravity to the rear in his design and position the engine and gearbox behind the driver. The elasticity of the engine during a test conducted by test engineer Eberan Eberhorst on the test rig was astonishing from the very beginning. The maximum engine speed of 4,500 revs per minute was remarkably low for a racing car even at that time. It developed close to 300 horsepower and reached its maximum torque at just 2,700 revs per minute. In his contract with Auto Union, Porsche had agreed to the acceptance condition that the car had to drive 10 laps of the Arbus racing circuit and reach a speed of at least 250 kilometers per hour on each straight. The first test drives took place in autumn of that same year on the Nürburgring racing circuit, and on the 6th of March 1934, a mere 364 calendar days after work had started, Stuck drove the agreed 10 laps of the Arbus circuit and set a world record of 217.110 kilometers in 1 hour. In order to set this record, he had to drive at a maximum speed of 270 kilometers per hour on the straights.
A lot of these videos don't have very good audio. That was taken in 1958 at Open Park, I believe. Now it's time to get into the 1935 German Grand Prix, which is the whole focus of this thing in my mind, showing the overwhelming odds that Nuvolari faced. His teammates were, as I said before, Louis Chiron and Rene Dreyfus. Make a long story short, they dropped out early and the whole thing was left to Nuvolari. There were 5 Mercedes and 4 Auto Unions. I won't go through all the statistics. This was, the Alpha team stayed at the hotel. They were despondent. They said, we don't have a chance. Enzo said, in all the humility you can imagine him having, saying, you know, it'd be nice if we could have a 3rd place finish. That would help pay the cost. Oh, by the way, this picture, he was criticized because he'd come back from all these crashes. And they said, you can never race again. You're all washed up. And to prove he was still fit enough, there he is standing there. Now, the excitement there was 200,000 to 300,000 people there. People were dressed in their Nazi outfits. There were hundreds of thousands of soldiers there marching up and down, marching bands, banners, everything. And then suddenly all that was broken by the sound of a siren announcing that Herr Hohenheim had arrived. He was the Minister of German Motorsports and a thoroughly disgusting man. Then to add to it, there was I wouldn't call it a flyover, it was a dive bomb attack by a Stuka prototype, and they became quite prevalent, but no one knew what they were looking at the time was a prototype. So as the cars were brought to the grid, the visitors were allowed to come first. So Nuvolari, his team, go out there. He's wearing his red hat, blue pants, yellow shirt, a scarf with the tricolor of the Italian flag. His son Giorgio was in the pits. And the Germans wore white. That sounds like a line from Casablanca. But then, as the engines were fired up, Decimo, his good mechanic, comes up to him and says, over the roar, "Bocca al lupo," meaning into the light, into the mouth of the wolf. At the start, the start lights go off. Varzi hits a mechanic, which is unfortunate. And Nuvolari, I think, started out back around 8th, but by the first turn he had passed 2 cars because he took a very wide line where everybody was hugging on the inside, turn 1 at Nürburgring. He dove down in an opening and passed 2 cars right off the bat. At the end of lap 1, Rudy Caracciola had a 12-second lead, but it wasn't over the auto unions, as everyone expected, or maybe another Mercedes, was over Nuvolari, and the crowd was stunned. It just can't be. If you look at this image here compared to what we've seen with the Mercedes, it's absolutely like an old-fashioned buggy. It's upright. It's lacking at least 100 horsepower to all the other cars. So it was totally outclassed. It didn't have this sophisticated suspension or anything like that. As I said, the other Alphas dropped out. Now he's there by himself. Laps 10 and 11, he's leading. And the crowd was just horrified. Neubauer wasn't too concerned. He says, it's Nuvolari. Either he'll crash his car or he'll crash his head. But on lap 12, disaster struck. He came into pit, he stuck the pressurized fuel rig into it, pulled the trigger, and nothing happened. Kind of like when I do my little clicking here, and nothing happens. And in the meantime, Von Braunich, who was pretty smart at this, had taken his crew aside before and trained them in making faster pit stops, and was able to take 20 seconds off, his previous best times. So Von Braunich came in, and in 47-second lap time, Nuvolari's pit stop was 134 seconds. I'm doing seconds so I can keep the math straight in my head. He goes roaring out of the pits. There's no speed limit. Nearly hits a couple of the pit marshals. He's so furious. And now he's behind by 87 seconds at the Nürburgring against the might of the Silver Arrows. It seemingly he has no chance. In this image here, it almost looks like it's a painting. I mean, I think someone has stylized a true photo. But he was outraged. He was just furious. And you can't blame him. He wasn't blaming the mechanics so much, but he was directing his anger towards them. The man was driven and obsessed and just absolutely wanted to win. And then to have this happen. Then, so he starts out from a dead start. He goes out, he's in 6th place. At the end of a standing lap, he's now back to 2nd, passing the Silver Arrow. I can't imagine how a human being could do that with all these disadvantages I've been bringing to your attention. So, with 3 laps to go, the gap drops from 87 seconds to 63 seconds. Now Neubauer is getting worried. Meanwhile, Herr Hohenheim, this horrible man, has a speech all written proclaiming the glory of the Nazis and the German people, and he's kind of like fumbling with like, ooh, getting a little nervous here. But they said, no, it won't work. He's gonna break. Meanwhile, the auto union crew is chuckling, watching Neubauer sweat like this, because it's the enemy of my enemy is my friend, I guess is the best way to put it. And they were pretty much out of it by then. So we go now to 6 miles to go on the last lap. I think I left something out here. No, well, we're down to the last lap. And here we see what happened. Now, after this race, the Nazi propaganda machine went into full mode, and they said he lucked into this race. He did not luck into it. He took an inferior car with a severely poor pit stop, made up 87 seconds on the most challenging racetrack in the world, and drew within close enough so that Von Braunich could look in his mirror and see him. He was right behind him. And right here we see with the tire blew, and Nuvolari had swerved to avoid him. That's how close he was. So he did not fall into this. As a matter of fact, he didn't like the idea. He wanted to beat him fair and square. He didn't like the idea of winning by someone else braking. But I often wonder, because he had a plan. Of course, he would get by him. But if you're familiar with the Nürburgring track, after you come out of the last turn, there's a long straightaway to the start-finish line. How would he overcome something like that with such an inferior car? So, but he did prefer a fight to the finish. And here we see, so the crowd was stunned, obviously. The PA system said nothing for 15 minutes. They said, what do we do now? So, do we even have an Italian flag? They couldn't find an Italian flag for quite a while. Eventually, they found one. Herr Hohenheim tears up his speech, And the crowd eventually starts warming up to him, because after all, a lot of them are race fans, and not just, robots. So Tazio arrives in the pits, sweaty, dirty, and very happy, and he has accomplished one of the greatest achievements in all sports. And at that moment, he goes to his companion, or his mechanic, a good friend, Decimo, and says, Decimo, go to my suitcase. I have a recording of the Italian national anthem. He brought it to every race, not just this one, expecting the Germans were going to stick it to him. He brought it to every race as a good luck charm. He was a guy who was in the good luck charms, as a lot of Italians were. But ask your grandmothers if you're Italian. And now look at, again, all this time he's constantly being carried around by fans around the world at all the races. He was so popular and so well loved and such a good guy, but he's just, I don't even get into all the broken bones he had. So you can see the crowd looks pretty happy there, except for this guy. Ah, yes. He doesn't look too happy. Ran rod straight, and I have a little humorous clip here. Now I'm not sure I'm going to play it because I'm not sure it'll go over. But I often thought, who got to break the news to Hitler? Honestly. Because what happened, at a soccer match a couple of years earlier, Hitler went in attendance and to give his blessing and to inspire the crowd. Well, the Germans lost, and they were the heavy favorites, and he was humiliated. So he didn't like that. He didn't go to any of those events except one more that I'll come to later on. So there we have that, and yes, it says here, Nuvolari wins over Stuck. Now, there is a limited amount of video available. Oh, this is the start of the German Grand Prix. Now, okay, bear with me. If you don't like this, I'm in big trouble. The British have a wonderful sense of humor. They do. Some of it I don't understand, well, actually quite a lot. In this very short video, you're going to see a man that I have identified as Sergeant Schultz. Okay? And unfortunately, there's just a brief flash, but look at his face, how it turns to horror when this little event occurs. Keep that face in mind.
At the Nürburgring, a light system is used, which fails to work.
I don't know. That strikes me. I mean, all this Nazi supremacy and all this, they designed this great system. It's kind of like, oh no, I'm not going to mention politics. No. Let's see. Okay, now we're waiting as the thing, oh please don't, if this does it again, I'll die. Okay, go. There you go. There's Sergeant Schultz, okay? Now, because I've spent way too much time in my whole life, I did uncover something that was far worse. This poor guy, I feel sorry for him. You might want to call him victim number one. But if you were to turn the camera around from that last scene, you would see what he saw that horrified him so much. Please, be calm. Hold on here. Well, I'm glad somebody liked this. I hate to tell you how much time I wasted doing that. Honestly. And this is where I was, oh, I went the wrong way. This is where I was yesterday. I was practicing this video, and all of a sudden, and I think I may have mentioned it in where we slowed down a bit, I said, what? Where did that message come from that PowerPoint is shutting down? I didn't put that in there. That's exactly what happened yesterday, like it happened earlier. Oh dear, come on, now advance. Don't be mean. Now, we've got two videos to choose. I watched both of them. One of them has good engine sounds, but they're kind of fake. I think I want to go with a good dialogue. I'm not gonna let you choose. I'm going to go with this one because it's the British and they say things so well.
1935, German Grand Prix is Nuvolari's masterpiece. At the start, 3 Mercedes immediately take the lead. The race looks like becoming a boring parade of German cars, but a small Alfa manages to join the leading group. Nuvolari is between von Brautisch and Caracciolo, and Nuvolari is taking a desperate chance. Caracciolo manages to overtake him, but finishes up in the pits with no tires. Neubauer's gesture speaks for itself, faced by a hell-for-leather Nuvolari, who is on his way to one of his most satisfying wins.
Well, I hope that appeared well on the screen because it looks horrible from here. Was it okay? Okay, good. Okay, now let's pause now as Windows ponders. 1 year and 400 miles away, the great Nazi Empire had their nose rubbed in it again by a very great man. Jesse Owens. Good. Now at this event, Hitler was there, and he was humiliated when 300,000 fans showed up, and it was just fantastic. Here is the man to the left is a silver medalist. I can't find what event he was in, but he came over and congratulated him, and they got along really well. It shows how sports transcends morons. And actually, he did get a letter after allegedly Hitler stormed out, and I believe that to be true. But he did get a letter from Hitler congratulating him, which I thought was pretty nice. But Jesse Owens in his biography pointed out he never got any recognition from President Roosevelt, and that kind of stuck with him for a while. Now you can make your own caption for this. I like it because it's like, look what we did. You know, we proved that human beings are better than governments and philosophies. And two great athletes, two of, in my opinion, the best of all time. Oh, let's see. Oh, this is a nice one. Oh, I got to show this to you. You know, if you want to leave, as I said before, but I'm skipping through some of this, but here's the thing. It's an Italian. It sounds beautiful. But the images are so striking. The turns, the track where it's at. It's at Copaciano in Livorno, Italy. Look for the apex at the gas pump.
La 16ª edizione della Coppa Ciano sul non facile circuito detto di Miramare, dopo una movimentata gara ricca di emozioni, è stata una spettacolosa affermazione dell'industria italiana e di nostri piloti. Nuvolari, seguito da Brivio e Dreyfus, giunge primo al traguardo, alla media oraria di 120 km 382 metri.
At the apex? Oh gosh. Okay, come on, baby, you can do it. Just go a little faster. A little bit faster. Oh, now this one's really good because you're gonna like this. It's in color. I never knew he wore a red helmet. This is from George Monkhouse, who is the official photographer for Mercedes-Benz. He was an Eastman Kodak Company executive, and we have him to thank for this rare color footage. I promise, I'll cut out some of the other videos. So, whoa, I went back. Oh shoot, go back. Hold on. Okay, hold on. It's over.
This unique color footage. It was shot in 1937 by an English photographer, George Monkhouse, who recounts his impression of the German teams.
Tremendous. Just the sheer efficiency of the whole shooting match when it arrived on the starting line. I mean, everything worked about them. When they put the starter in the front, it started. There was no nonsense.
Manfred von Brauchitsch, the Mercedes driver, and Tazio Nuvolari in his famous red helmet. who's now driving for Auto Union. The brilliant Bernd Rosemeyer and his Auto Union. Mercedes' Alfred Neubauer. Caracciola adjusts his mirror, watched by his wife Alice, who's keeping the lap charts. The race that George Monkhouse photographed was the 1937 Pescara Coppa Acerbo, and we see the race from the pits. Team manager Neubauer, with his red and black flag, brings in Caracciola for a routine pit stop. German pit work has become legendary. The cars are averaging only 3 miles to the gallon and have a capacity of 88 gallons. 4 wheels are changed, and a mechanic tests the temperature of the exhaust manifold, looking for a cool one which would indicate a misfiring cylinder. All is well. The screen is cleaned, and Neubauer sends Caracciola on his way after 26 seconds. In the heat of the Italian summer, Rosemeyer's Auto Union has tyre trouble, but wins the race. Von Brauchitsch comes in second, and Dick Seaman fifth. In those days, the drivers dressed casually, and few wore crash helmets.
I have a great little video. I don't think I'm going to be able to show you because of time, unless you want to stay afterwards. Come on. It's about this. Here's Tazio arriving in New York for the Vanderbilt Cup, 1936. But what you don't know is, well, you may know, his son had died while he was aboard the ship. He was very despondent, but he was a good trooper. He showed up. There's the team. There's the team again. I tried very hard to find out who owned that car because the license plate was on it. I thought it would be interesting. And I just can't show. Well, but this one here is kind of, no, I'm not going to show. Okay. Here he is. Hit a deer, bandaged himself up because he didn't want anybody to know that he had been injured because they'd say, well, you won't let you race. So he, come on, we can do Donnington, can't we?
Mercedes produced the W154, a V12. It incorporated all the experience gained over 4 years. It had cost millions, subsidized by the German government. At Stuttgart, money was never a problem.
I could have as much as I wanted. Nobody said I was spending too much. And then I don't even know what we spent.
The V12 engines alone reputedly cost £7,400 each in 1938. They were built to the highest standards, as was the entire car. The road holding was certainly the best that could then be obtained and would be difficult to improve on today. Few Grand Prix cars have surpassed the purposeful lines of the 1938 Mercedes. When teams are uneasy and almost pull out. Uhlenhaut and Neubauer received direct instructions from Stuttgart to race. Not unnaturally, Dick Seaman is hoping for another. Nuvolari is to drive an Auto Union. The pre-war 3-mile Donington circuit was very narrow and very bumpy.
It's well known that the German cars have every advantage over the other entries. Billy Cotton, number 18, finds the tempo pretty hot as he swings round the bend. Seaman, Lang and Miller take a chance and get away with it. But after all, that's bound to happen in a race like this.
An English car engine blows up and oil is spilled onto the track. The first victim is the Auto Union of Hassa. Dick Seaman follows in his Mercedes, but he will be able to restart.
Is surprised to find Nuvolari number 4 in the lead. Driving with all the skill that has made him world famous, he goes on to win at an average speed of 80.49 miles an hour.
What they didn't mention in that, I'm going to have to skip the 1939 Belgrade. By then, everybody thought Tazio had it. He was mid-50s. Really, I got to tell you this story. He was 54 years old at Italia. They said, there's no way a 54-year-old man who's so sick can race for 16 hours. Long story short, he finished second overall, with the first car being an Alpha 2300. And it was extraordinary. And that's when the police had to come in and rescue him. The wheel falls off, he drives it, steers it back to the pits with a steering shaft. There's the mask again. A-Barth. Oh, one of these, or A-Barth, yeah, Italia. Carlo A-Barth is right there on the right. And someone mentioned that at the Formula One race in the U.S., they're going to have a auction of the last car he ever raced. This is another great story. This one is probably Enzo Ferrari's nightmare because first the bonnet flew off, then the seat broke and Tazio stopped and filled up a couple bags with oranges and lemons. Then the spring shackle broke. And here's this 56-year-old man, and he gets to the pits, and the mechanics say, no, you're done, you got to quit. He got back in a car, took off. Enzo arrives on the scene, bursts into tears. Was he worried about his reputation, or was he worried about his friend? Because he was, a very sick man, he shouldn't be doing that. So there it is, he finished. Phenomenal. Here's the cartoon. Pretty much describes it. This is the Ferrari PR nightmare. But so after the war, there he is with Fangio, and he's doing great. This almost gave me a heart attack. I said, "What's Bob Booker's Jaguar XK120?" Bob Booker started out with an XK120 Jag. Oh, I got to show you this one. Now look at the guy on the left. Doesn't he remind you of Roberto Benigni, the famous Italian actor and director? I joined Facebook. They'll tell me if it's his, if there's a family relation. Well, there isn't. The storyline here is that this guy on the right is a bookie, and he does sports betting. So the guy on the left, Roberto Benigni, we'll call him, shows up with Tazio. He says, the guy on the right says, Nuvolari, bicicletta, means bicycle racer. No, because his father and uncle were big name racers. No, race car driver. So he makes his, here's his movie debut.
Pensavo come fare in bicicletta io.
No, non ha capito. I grano sono I soldi. Un sacco sono 1000 lire e mezza gamba 500.
Io allora preferisco un sacco.
Ma un sacco sono 1000 lire.
Ma la mezza gamba è mia, è chiaro.
Direi. Beh, contento lei, contenti tutti. Allora, una lezione 1000 lire e 2 lezioni anticipate.
Ecco fatto, ecco fatto.
Grazie.
Disegno da box, molto interessante.
Ma no, c'è Tazio.
Chi? La fidanza?
No, Tazio Nuvolari, il nostro grande.
Nuvolari!
Sì.
Il ciclista.
Professore, volante, automobile.
Già, che stupido, corridore d'automobilisti. Sì. Questo ragazzo si farà,
Bravo!
You can see how I spend my life thinking up stuff like this. Come on, faster, you bugger. Oh, I gotta show you this one. His culture still lives on, and every year they have a festival celebrating this. Now for you Alfa Romeo fanatics, I'm going to show you what a proper Alfa Romeo color should be. Standing next to it will be a person in red wearing the wrong color for an Alfa Romeo. I wish this thing had a fast forward button, but it doesn't. so I may have to just cut it off once we get the proper color. That's the proper color on the left. The one on the right is completely improper. Not the correct Alfa Romeo red. Stop, just too much. Okay, these are photos he took on his vacation. Tazio was a great hunter, among other things, and this little boy was with him and was very distressed to find out that hunting involved eating what you caught that night. He was tormented by it. I love this because of the angularity of that and the palm trees and the car turning in. He went to Indy, was very polite, didn't think much of Indy racing, but he loved the dirt track racing when he and his wife went to, I think they saw some midgets. Does this look familiar? Yeah. Oh, look, there's a sign. It's a spa, Stavolo, yeah. That's his vacation, spa. There he is with Decimo at the marker for Bernd Rosemeyer. And that's his business manager sitting in the car. I wonder if that qualifies as a company car. Another great guy came and talked about these. These are some, oh, there he is. Tazio the dentist. He was also an expert skier. And look, now in near retirement, he's back into flying again. Yeah. I love this picture because it shows what race drivers used to look like. Their pronounced jaw, the helmet, the hairy arms, the straight driving position, and it's just great. The end. Thank you very much. If he doesn't talk too much, I'll
Joe, that was great. I have tears in my eyes, but tears of gladness. You want to take some questions about the production of this and how you did this, or
yes,
anything
it was
else?
a giant pain in the butt. I had never done a PowerPoint presentation before. I had never done video editing or photo editing. I learned how to add, most of that music on there is what I've added because there was no soundtrack. I've got over 8 gigs here. There's some stuff here you should see. Feel free to leave, it's over with. He lost both of his sons in their teens, and he realized after he lost his first one, he didn't take enough pictures. So he took some great pictures. This will be played, as you're leaving the room if you want to see it. And I got another one of a crazy man doing a Nuvolari presentation. But I thank you all for being so patient. I know that I spent way too much time. I haven't worn a watch in over 30 years, and I have a good internal clock, but apparently it wasn't working today.
So when did he die?
He died in 1953. He was about 60 years old.
Oh, you're saying he was ill. What was he ill with?
Basically, from decades of being exposed to cigarettes, he was a heavy cigarette smoker, racing cars when the exhaust systems would fall off, but mostly because of the toxic fumes of the exotic fuels they used in the day, and all that was a deadly mix. And he broke so many bones in his body. I mean, I didn't even get to the stories about him racing with a cast on. I mean, it's just fascinating. If you want to read a book, I would recommend Count Johnny Marani's book. And if you have any more questions, you can write to me at joetierno@yahoo.com. I've got a number of books and a stack of papers. Yes, sir.
In your research, did you ever hear about when he started driving for Auto Union, that the Germans stated he was so good because his nose made him more aerodynamic?
No.
I grew up with that. I heard that from
Well, they
and that was, the typical.
yeah, exactly. Well, I'll tell you this much. The Nazi organization put heart and soul into this, all the money they could, because they wanted to bring back the spirits of the people after World War I. And this is one of the ways they were doing it. And also, sadly, Hitler was a big racing fan, I hate to say it. But the Aryan purity thing was so tragic, and it was so awful, that they didn't want an Italian, quite honestly. But they saw that nobody could touch them. So for an Italian, because they didn't think much of Italians then, and I don't know what they think now, but they did not hold him in high regard. But Nuvolari, because of his enormous talent, and I just can't describe it in enough superlatives. If I just got into the way he would win races with broken bones and tied up in cast, come from 6 laps down, it was just incredible. It's just, driving with a broken seat, for crying out loud. I mean, the guy was just unbelievable. So for them to say that, well, I can relate to that because I'm pretty streamlined myself. So, no, but that wouldn't surprise me. But some of the people were really nasty. But Baron Rosemeyer was a great guy. He came off really well, died way too young. And I don't know. So, any other questions?
Well, Joe will be over at the center, and Otto Linton, the great Otto Linton, who's here today, is going to be interviewed. And any of you who want to sit in with this interview, it's going to be filmed.
Okay.
And Ron, will you permit people to ask questions, or are you going to be asking Otto most of the questions?
We're going to be encouraging people to ask questions, and I'm relying on Bill Green and Kevin and everyone to do most of the questioning, because this is their realm. So.
And Otto drove up today with his daughter and granddaughter. So Otto Linton, we're glad to have you here. Where's Otto? Right there.
So, yeah, feel free to leave, but this is
Okay, we're here at the International Motor Racing Research Library, and I'm Bill Green, and I'm interviewing Otto Linton, who raced here in 1948 and up through into the 60s. And we're going to try to trace a little bit of his performance over the years and some stuff that he did in Europe before he came to the United States. And welcome, Otto.
Thank you, Bill.
Tell us a little story, if you would. It's one of my favorites, about you and your friend riding motorcycles to the Czech Grand Prix in 1937.
Well, I can tell you a little different one.
Okay.
It's similar.
Okay.
Is that all right?
Fine.
We'll tie on to Joe.
Okay.
1935, there was an opening of a highway, a high highway on the Großglockner mountain to tie Germany into Italy. So for the first day, they had all kinds of festivities, but on the second day, they had some races, well, almost like hill climbs. It was very interesting. There were Grand Prix drivers. They were the from most the countries like Germany, France, and Italy. And they had certain groups. The Germans had down Rosemeyer, Brauchitsch, and a couple other ones. And the French had Bugattis and Talbots. And Italy had Alfa Romeos and Maseratis. Well, they introduced a lot of people, and one of them happened to be well, they called him Mastro. Nuvolari.
Yeah.
And we had we did the same from Vienna to the mountains with the bikes. But we had a nice place where we set the things. But it was in 1935, and I had my first motorcycle. So it was a big pride. But we, there was 3 of us, and we were watching the antique cars and the motorcycles and everything, and then the last ones were the Grand Prix cars. So it was pretty interesting, but we saw one of the Serpentines roads parts because they were below us. We were a little higher. So there was only one car that impressed us, all of us. That was Nuvolari. So after that, we were looking out in the magazines, the names and all that. But when the Czechoslovakian Grand Prix came up, well, the entries were, of course, Mercedes and Auto Union and Alfa Romeo. So obviously, Nuvolari would have been there. So the 3 of us, we went to the Grand Prix race with the motorcycles. And I had a camera that didn't take fast pictures and was quite a distance. And my colleague from the university, he had a much better camera. So the 3rd one had binoculars. Well, it was pretty nice. So when they started racing, the first time we saw them coming by, so we knew just about what the distance will be. And we recognized the cars with our friend giving us what it was. So anyhow, if you were at Joe's talk, you saw one of the pictures. But that came about that 2 of us were standing with the cameras, and he was a little higher up, and he was looking out, and he just says, "Here he comes." So we both clicked at the same time. So we came up with the same pictures.
That's all right. Yeah.
And
Is
that's Joe's bringing his head. He's missing that.
I got ahead of the game here. I should ask you how you got started in motorsports, and then we'll jump over the top. We already did. So just can you tell us a little bit how you got involved, and also where you were born in Austria?
Well, obviously, you know, I was born in Austria in the middle of First World War. So growing up wasn't very interesting because there was hardly any transportation. And we lived sort of in the suburbs, and there was almost an open street, but it didn't connect to anything, basically. So I was allowed to have my little 2-wheel scooter and out on the road. So one day I heard a beautiful sound. To me, it was just the ultimate of anything. And when it came around the corner, the guy stopped a little further down from me. And I had to go and look it over because cars, they were in my blood, I guess, I don't know. But anyhow, it turned out to be a Amel car. And I thought that was the beautiful car in the world, naturally. So I made myself a promise that I would become an engineer so I can work on cars, design cars, or whatever. And the next one was that I would own an Amel car. Well, I couldn't really find a decent job in engineering since I hadn't gotten my diploma, which got shut off when the university was shut down in '38. So when I come over, of course, I had to find a job. So I signed up as a tool and die maker, having the knowledge from the studies. But in one of the jobs, they sort of merged for defense work at the time. And one of the jobs, I had a couple people that were really interested in automobiles, and especially antiques. So one of the fellows I got very close and became a close friend was George Caswell, who had a B&C, which was not a Amel car, but looked similar. So that's how we got into the cars. And when the defense work stopped, we were looking for something to do. And at the time, we both belonged to the Antique Car Club. And a group in the Antique Car Club had Mercers and some other Stutzes and things like that. But they wanted to not just show the cars, but have some way of doing something with them, rallies or whatever. So they came up with the idea of a sports car division in the club. And in the couple meetings that we had, they decided, well, we ought to actually form a separate club. 1944, it came about in a meeting in Boston where George and I went up. And the form was decided on and postponed for another meeting that somebody can design the laws and regulations and whatever it was going to be. So I didn't have what was considered to be a sports car. I had a Duesenberg town car, not a touring car. That didn't work. So they said, well, you be just a former member, but you can be. So we went to all the meetings, but within a couple of months or so, I looked around and had to find a car, a sports car. Well, as thing goes on, it happened to be an Amel car, which put me into the club in '45. But we still only did a few rallies and things. But I think it was early in '48. It might have been late in '47. I'm not sure. We had formed the Philadelphia region in '46. But in '47 or early '48, I got a call from, I was RE at the time, I got a call from headquarters of the SECA, and they said, there is a possibility that we can get a race. And a fellow in Watkins Glen, New York, has asked if it is a possibility, and he has an idea of 3 different courses, routes through the town and all. Would you like to go up and talk to him? So George and I came up, and he showed us the ways around the Glen in all ways, what he had picked. And we all, after we were talking, we decided the course that he finally picked is the one that they agreed on. And that's how the racing for me started. But I didn't have an engine in the Emil car, so I found something else, which was an MG, a special car, a J4 that had been raced all over Europe and Ireland. And I also, again, had pieces missing, like supercharger. That was the normal installation. So I had to do that and all, but that was my first car here at the Glen. And from there on, I have met a number of the people, like at the, what's now known as the Cornet Bridge. After Denver turned over his car, and I blew the supercharger hose, so I was on foot, and right there where it happened. So I met Denver, and we stayed really friends, good friends, for life, until Denver passed away in '06. But I also met Tony Pompeo, and he always had cars, but not enough drivers. So I got invited to drive some different cars until I really, really fell in love with the one that he let me drive, because he had invited the principals from Seattle, the former owner and the president, to see if he can talk them into building cars for the States. So he was going to drive it for demonstration. But Tony weighed twice as much as I did, so he asked me to drive it because it only had a 750 engine in it. So that worked out pretty good. And I advanced after that in Oscar. I did meet the president, from a young man. He was pretty young, the son of the former founder of Seattle. And we got along pretty good because he didn't speak English. And I didn't speak Italian. So that was a solution. We both spoke German. And that started the situation between me and Seattle.
Can you tell us the little story about the Austrian border?
Okay,
I love
that comes up. Well, after I met Renato Ambrosini, I had to have a car that I saw a picture of, which was a 208 Seattle with a V8 engine and 2-liter V8 engine in it. So I arranged to buy one. But the time got very close for the 1952 race here. So I had to go over there and pick it up and break it in. So on the way there, I figured I have to drive it at least 1,000 miles or so. So I was all over. And I had met a number of friends through the club, and one of them was Mel Ladd, who is known about the old gray mare that he built. Well, anyhow, I went to visit him, and another of the 1948 drivers, Dean Bedford, he was stationed there in the service. So they were in Munich, and my father was at the time in Vienna, and I wanted to visit him, so I had to drive from Munich to Vienna in Austria, not thinking anything about it. The four countries had divisioned Austria up in four factors, I guess, whatever you want to call it. So I started just driving and came into Linz, which is the border between Germany and Austria, and I just kept on going. And all of a sudden I come of a bar across the road. Well, I just got near it and stopped, and two very, very young soldiers with their big guns hanging down all the way down to the road came out, and I didn't have any windows in the coupe. So I opened the door and wanted him to look at my passport. So he kept it closed with with his knee. So I just put my passport back in the pocket and just sat there. So they went over the car from top to bottom and top to bottom. And then one of the young boys pointed at the bar. I didn't know. And then he pointed again. He pointed at the bar. So I said, oh, he wants me to go under it. And it was so low that there wasn't any trouble going under it. Well, I kept on going, and then I turned around. I had the mirror, and I looked, and there were the guys. They were clapping, jumping up and down. The guns were hitting the ground, and they were just laughing. And so that was the story about the...
That's a rather neat story, I always thought. Can you tell us about the places you raced in the United States as well as Sebring when you ran in the 12 hour? Just generally.
Well, generally I raced basically on all the places that raced on the roads and then finally built tracks. Watkins Glen, of course, Elkhart Lake. There's a third one.
Oh, probably.
Bridgehampton.
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 Yeah.
So there were 6 different ones already.
Yeah.
And of course here, Watkins Glen, there were 3. So there were a little more than 6. But anyhow, I had Sebring. I raced 12 years. And the SAC races, if people are familiar with the SAC races, which were the races on the Strategic Air Command airports. Almost all of them. So they were 1953. I still had the little Seattle that I raced at Sebring, but I already had the 208, but I drove that down to Sebring. And on the way up, I raced 3 of the SAC races, so it was a slow way home. But anyhow,
it was fun.
That was fun. And of course, I was at the first race in '52, Now, strangely enough, in
Sack bases?
no, in 2012,
Uh-huh.
they were the 60-year
At Sebring?
at Sebring,
Yes.
and they invited
Oh,
the people that were left
yeah.
that raced there. It was just 4 of us.
Gee, that's quite a
So that was fun,
tradition,
but
yeah.
but I got a chance to make one lap in a Seattle that I sold in 1952 to Henry Wessels, who you're familiar with,
Yeah.
that raced here a lot. And of course he sold it very early when he got into alphas and so on. And a fellow picked it up not too long ago and restored it completely, just about like brand new. And he wanted me to drive it, so the SVRA allowed me to make a lap
Neat. I think that's neat.
with him, riding with me. So that was pretty interesting. But besides that, I had, like Linden, New Jersey was not a SCCA race. A couple other ones.
Did you ever go to Calicoon?
No, I did not. No,
Okay.
no.
That was a one-time deal.
But
Yeah. So, but of all of those, what was your favorite track? Favorite 2, let's go that way.
well, the favorite track goes with the favorite place, and that's right here.
Very good.
In Watkins Glen. That's why I'm coming back every year when I can.
I know I was telling you, or we were talking earlier in Sports Fair, there was a picture of you at Bryn Fan Tidden that Alex LaFontaine took out of a tree. You going underneath. I thought that was one of the neatest pictures.
Yeah, that Bryn Fan Tidden was one of my favorite tracks because I didn't particularly like hill climbs, and Wilkes-Barre was always the hill climb until the senator, who had a real nice big home and was actually enclosed on Pennsylvania roads.
Right.
And he got somehow a race arrangement made. And it was a real nice course. It was limited to 2 liters because it,
Go ahead, go ahead.
the 2 liters, so it was kind of narrow. Well, that I raced, the first race was the Little Seattle, the second race was the Big Seattle, and then the next 2 was the Oscar. And that's the one you referred to. It was sort of a little hilly. And it, on the one side it went down, on the other side it went up grade, and then had a big turn where it was flat across to the other side. Well, there was a hill that they had dug away for the road, and up on top of the hill was a tree. And Alex LaFontaine was a fabulous photographer, hobby photographer, because he was a engineer, a very, very gifted engineer. And he took a lot of pictures. So he tried some ways to get me in the Oscar. I was leading quite a bit, so he had time to get set up in one lap. Well, he was sort of hanging on the tree to take a picture down, and he claims, and I think you claim too, that he got a picture of the tachometer.
Yeah, that's what they say in sports. Yeah.
Which was a little over the red line a little bit.
Yes, it was.
But I don't have that picture, but there was one other one. He made a couple pictures. The one he put into the cover of the July 1955 SCCA sports car. And he called it Man at Work. You remember that?
Yeah, I do. Did you ever race at Berwick after they didn't run at Brent Van Tidden?
No.
Okay.
No.
She raced up here till the 1960, early 1960s.
62, I think, the last
yes.
one, yeah. Yeah, it was the 750 Oscar.
Yep. So you also were involved with raising horses too, I've read.
Huh?
Have you raised horses?
Yeah, I bred horses.
Yes, that's what I mean, raised horses, yeah.
After I sold my business.
Yes. And can you tell us about Speedcraft, your business?
Well, when we, George and I, when we sort of lost the job when they closed the business, we were still involved in helping other people from the SCCA region, the Philadelphia region. So he went looking for someplace, and not too far from where he lived at the time, there was a big old building. It wasn't really a barn, but it was a building that was halfway used for storage for a hardware store. But the other half was for rent, so he decided that that would create storage for some of the people that have more than one antique car. So he went out and we rented it and had a number of cars for storage, quite a few, as a matter of fact. I guess the most cars one renter had was Dot Wilson, who was president of SCCA for a while. And another one was by Badenhausen. He had 3 beautiful touring cars, actually. Packard, Duesenberg. And he had some more, but I don't remember. But anyhow, and it just grew to a point where we couldn't really do too much work. And after we were in there for a while, we were approached by a gentleman, he was actually a minister. He said he heard about the car that's called an MG, and his son he's going to turn 16 and he has to have an MG. Can you tell me how to get one? So we sort of looked around a little bit and found out that they're actually going to ship some 47 MGs in eventually. And, well, we found actually who, you have to excuse me, I sometimes block the names. The brothers, Miles Collier. Miles Collier and Sam had brought in the first load. And we were able to get them an MG. So that sort of lit up a little bit of an idea. Maybe that is a good business. So I went looking for a place. And I found that building in Exton. That's where I opened the Speedcraft. Roger says he saw the cars, but that was in my new shop. So But George found a job that he liked better, a machine shop where he goes in the morning and goes home in the afternoon, and not like me, tie up and go home about 7 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
So I wound up with being the owner.
You also had another interesting project there, the Speedcraft Special that you worked with Denver on.
Well, one of the members had sold Denny Denver-Cornet a car that basically did not have an engine, although he had pieces of an engine, Indianapolis car, that had pieces, but not complete pieces from an, DuPont at the time owned Indian. And they were going to do that. So they had started to build that overhead cam for a Model B engine. But apparently it wasn't quite completed. So in that deal between Dave Felix selling it to Denver, he made a deal with Hugler, if you name him. They kept the engine, and Denver had the car, but no engine. So I built him a V8, a Ford V8 engine from a 40 Mercury block with a 180 crank, because I figured it would give him better torque for the long hill at the Glen. So we built it all up, and he didn't have much luck with the car. He kept on wrecking it. I guess after the TC, it was a little too fast for him.
Take any questions from people here? Would you like to ask Otto any questions?
I had one for him, if you'd put it in question form. What one race brings back the fondest memories?
Which race in your career brings back the fondest memories?
I think the 1952 on the second course, because it turned out so nice. The one that was just ahead of me only is sitting out there.
Joe? Yeah. Wait a minute, I'll come to you.
Well, this should come as no surprise, but I'm curious about watching Nuvolari. You're the only person we know that's ever seen him race. And what was the spirit of the crowd like? Did you sense that he was that good? Could you tell the difference? I mean, you're
absolutely. Everybody rooted for him, because that was the first of the races that he did not get the podium. Right? He placed third, if I remember right. But he was behind it. He could. Incidentally, there's something that didn't you mention either, that when he changed, when he gave up Alfa Romeo, that race in 37 was his very last race for Alfa.
When the car caught on fire, yes. I had a whole section on that. And unfortunately, I couldn't.
Because they gave him this, what I never heard of it before, but they gave him this 4.4 liter, and he thought it was atrocious. It wouldn't handle, and he said, no more Alphas.
I have a story on that. I don't want to interpose here, but maybe I'll mention it so that perhaps you can add to it. But I'm pretty sure it's the same car. He drove the car in testing and said, this car is awful.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to kill myself with this car.
Yeah.
I don't want to die.
Yeah.
And he went to the Alpha engineers, who of course are engineers, and he was not, but he was extremely confident. Dr. Porsche had the greatest respect for him because of his mechanical ability. So the engineers felt, if we go take this to Dr. Porsche, perhaps he can approve it and tell, Tazio, this is a good deal. They took the plans to Dr. Porsche, who literally almost fell out of the seat laughing. He said, this is terrible. Whoever drives this car is going to kill himself. So that's the car you're talking about.
They got it twice. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I couldn't tell that story.
Anybody else got questions?
Did you ask him about the happenstall question about racing with him in the early 60s with an A-bar in a BMW?
You raced with Heppenstall and the A-bars and all that. Can you tell us anything about those?
Never.
Never?
Never.
Oh, okay.
Heppenstall never raced. He got repeated notices in the history that's now on the internet for races that he never raced. He got 3 of them for that I raced the Formula Junior in the Bahamas because he handled the entries for Tom Fleming. But Tom Fleming drove, and I drove.
Because my brother asked that question, and he got it off the net the other day. He said, ask Otto about that. Now, what about that?
But the A-bars, not the A-bars, the BMW, the 700 BMW, he owned the car, but he didn't have an engine. And I was pretty close friend with Carl Grasso, who was the shop manager for Hoffman. And they had BMW at the time as importer. Well, he was a German. And he was very much interested in making extras, except for, we just doing car engines and that kind of stuff. Well, he brought in 10 racing 700 engines, and I got one of them. And that's what we raced. But I don't actually know what happened after I raced it at Marlboro at one time, and another one. But it was a going concern. I mean, it was flying.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about was the incident during the 1951 Catherman's Cup at the White House Asses up here at Watkins Glen, where you got squeezed off into a pole or a tree. Do you want to tell us today who was involved in that incident, or do you want to keep that a secret?
In 51, where I was demonstrating the Seata prototype, well, it was moving pretty good. And all the other 750s didn't. So I came upon the guy that was second to me to pass him for the second lap. So it was Dolph Villardi was his name. Right? Well, anyhow, he saw in his mirror somebody was behind him, but he didn't really realize who it was. And he kept on waving me on. And he was all the way on the right side. So I did. But when I was almost half of his, at least near the rear wheels, he closed the door. He just crossed over and I went in the ditch. So he came in first.
Did he apologize afterward?
He did eventually, yes. Because he heard the guy that was handing the trophy to him was not far from me. He said, "That's really yours."
Did you do any oval track or hill climb, anything other than road racing?
No, I think that's about all of it. Or do you have something else?
Anybody else have any other questions? Well, it's been a pleasure for the second time this year to chat with you and interview you and talk about old times. And I want to thank you so much on behalf of the International Motor Racing Research Library. And I'm always glad to be around to chat with you. And so isn't Kevin.
Thank you, Bill. You always will, and you know I will.